Welcome to all my friends on social media. It's so nice to be here this 20th Sunday in Ordinary Time. And on this Sunday, once again, Jesus has a wonderful invitation to all of us. He is asking us to abide in Him. And therefore, I'd like to entitle our reflection on Call to abide in Jesus. To abide in a relationship means to remain in a relationship and to be fulfilled in that relationship. And that is exactly what Jesus is talking about in this beautiful gospel for the 20th Ordinary Sunday of the year. Called to abide. So let's have a look and unfold this beautiful theme of call to abide in Jesus. When we look at ourselves, our human hearts and our human personalities, the human being is yearning for fulfillment, is yearning for love. Love is the big thing in a human person's life, your life and my life. And we are looking for love. And we realize that it's only love that can fulfill us. I mean, we are all trying various things. We are trying to fill that big hole in our heart with various things like our work, our career, our successes, our families, our amount of money, and the assets and properties that we have and own. And we think that that will fulfill us. Those are good things in itself, but will they fulfill us? That is the big question. And we realize that there is a big hole in our heart, a hole in our heart for intimacy. That is why our heart yearns for intimacy, to be remaining and abiding in a relationship. And only relationships can fulfill us. No thing can fulfill us in our lives. And we look for and yearn for that fulfillment in our life, that fulfillment in infinity. We want infinity to fulfill us because our hearts are so large. And more than infinity, it's eternity. Eternity is a constant abiding in God. So that is what the human heart is yearning for. And nothing can fulfill our heart and our lives. No thing can fulfill it. There must be some other thing that will fulfill it. So let me go through a few quotations. The best and most beautiful things in this world cannot be seen or even heard, but must be felt with the heart. You see, these little quotations that I'm giving you, they're trying to tell us that there is a sense of yearning for fulfillment in the human heart and person, but there's something that cannot fulfill it. Happiness is not a station you arrive at, but a manner of traveling. So these quotations are trying to describe the type of fulfillment that the human heart is yearning for. There's another quotation that says, "Let not your mind run on what you lack as much as on what you have already." You see, all these things are telling us that there is a desire for fulfillment. And finally, the purpose of life is not to be happy, but to matter, to be productive, to be useful, to have it make some difference that you have lived at all. So you see, all these people, whoever are making these quotations, are people trying to grasp at that yearning and that fulfillment, that sense of fulfillment in the human heart. But what does Jesus have to say about it? So let's look at our second point. In order to understand Jesus on this 20th Sunday in Ordinary Time, the scriptures, the readings for the Holy Mass, give us this reading from Wisdom. And it is from the wisdom books, and it's from Proverbs chapter 9, verses 1 to 6. But I'm not reading the whole thing. This is what it says. To those without sense, wisdom says, "Come and eat of my bread, and drink of the wine I have mixed. Lay aside immaturity and live, and walk in the way of insight." Here's an invitation to come and abide in God. and the book of Wisdom is calling us to that abiding in God. And our next question is, what are the ways of abiding in our human life, in human intimacy? One beautiful way of abiding in human intimacy is sexual intimacy. That is why sex is so sacred in marriage. And marriage is the place where you can be intimate with your spouse sexually. And that is a great way of abiding in each other. And you fulfill yourselves there, and the product, the fruit of that fulfillment is a child. So there's that beautiful way of intimacy in human living, in human relationships. Also, friendships. There are different stages of friendships in which we can abide in each other's company. That is why fulfillment is all about relationships. Abiding is all about relationships. Now, how do I abide in Jesus? How is Jesus calling me to abide in Him? When Jesus is asking me to come and abide in Him, what is He asking me to do? There are different ways of abiding in Jesus. Number one, in baptism, we're all baptized to be in Jesus so that we join Him in His death and rise with Him in His resurrection. And baptism is that new life in Jesus. To live our life in our daily life every day is to live and unfold the new life of Christ in us. The second way of abiding in Jesus is in His Word, by listening to His Word, reading His Word, and living His Word in our daily life. The third way of abiding in Jesus is through personal prayer. Prayer is a relationship with God, with Jesus, and that is why prayer is talking to God. When I am abiding in Jesus, I talk to Him. And again, another way of abiding in Jesus is through works of mercy. Works of mercy tell us that it's not about me, that I don't want to stress me and myself, but I want to give of what I have. And it is in that giving that we receive, and we receive the gift of love. And finally, a fifth way of abiding in Jesus is by witnessing to Him, telling other people what He has done for me, who He is for me, how He has transformed my life. That is a beautiful way of abiding in Jesus. Now, Jesus is inviting us to abide in Him not just through His baptism, not just through His Word, not just through prayer, but He takes it one level higher, one level deeper. He takes it a notch higher. And what is that? He is inviting us to abide in Him in an exalted and mystical way. And many people misunderstand this way. And this is the gospel that He is teaching us today. He wants us to share in the Eucharist, to eat and drink His precious body and blood. And this is where I would like to read the gospel of this Sunday for you. Jesus said to the people, "I am the living bread that came down from heaven. Whoever eats this bread will live forever. And the bread that I will give for the life of the world is my flesh." Now the people then disputed among themselves, saying, "How can this man give us his flesh to eat?" Here is the mystical. The people that he was talking to, and the people that were listening to Jesus, thought that Jesus was going to give him or give them His physical flesh. Here's my hand, have a bite. No, Jesus was on a different level, a level which we call a mystical level. Sometimes we may not understand it, but if we put our effort into understanding it, then truly we can. So Jesus said to them, "Very truly I tell you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink His blood, you have no life in you. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise them up on the last day. For my flesh is true food, and my blood is true drink. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood abides in him, and I in them. So here we have that mystical teaching of Jesus. Can we understand that mystical teaching of Jesus? Yes, we can, if we want to. This is the challenge of what I call our faith. How deeply do you believe in Jesus? If you and I really believe in Jesus, then we will go all the way with him, not just part of the way. Now my big question is, where do I go to receive this living bread? How can I receive this living bread today, here and now? The Catholics have it. The Catholics have what we call, the Holy Mass. What is the Mass? The Mass is the place where we make Jesus present. How can we make Jesus present? He has given us the power to make him present. Right from the very beginning, from that first day when he sat at that banqueting table of the Last Supper, and he took bread, he blessed it, broke it, and gave it to his disciples, saying, "This is my body, this is my blood. Take it and eat it, take it and drink it." From that day onwards, the apostles passed on that power to the priests in the Catholic Church to celebrate this most beautiful gift so that they can make Jesus present in his body and blood. And that is where we go to receive him. Now, we need faith. We will, as human beings, find all kinds of faults not to believe in this. That's your choice. But that does not change reality. You may have your choices, but your choices may not gel with the reality that God has given us. Now the point is, this is where the rubber hits the road. Do I believe it? Do I want to believe it? Do I have the option to believe it? It is for you and for me to figure out. But it is a gift that Jesus has given you and me. Am I ready to receive this gift in the Holy Mass, the Eucharistic celebration that the Catholic Church celebrates? In the Holy Mass that is celebrated, the priest makes Jesus' body and blood present in the Eucharist. And here is where each one of us is invited to experience and share that mystical love of God that he gives us, that Jesus gives us in the Eucharist. Here is where we abide in Jesus in the Eucharist and carry in us the promise of the resurrection, to live with him forever. What a mighty promise that is. I want to live forever. My heart has a big hole, and I'm trying to fill it with all kinds of things, but nothing will fill it. Nothing will satisfy it. Here is Jesus offering himself in the Eucharist every day, as the Catholic Church celebrates the Eucharist every day. He's inviting me to participate and to celebrate in that beautiful gift of his giving of himself in his precious body and blood. Food for my resurrection, food for my everlasting life in the world. And only in sharing in his precious body and blood that I can live in him forever. This is his promise. He fulfills this promise. Jesus is truth. He cannot tell us a lie. And he fulfills his promise. He wants us to deepen our sharing in his life by sharing in his precious body and his precious blood. And that is why Jesus invites us to come and abide in him. And my personal invitation to you, whatever our beliefs are, put it aside. Let not our beliefs confuse our mind, but rather help our beliefs to deepen what we experience, to deepen what our celebration is all about. Because ultimately, you and I want to be fulfilled. You and I want to live for all eternity, and Jesus has the invitation. Take the plunge and come to his banqueting table. Here is where the priest in the Catholic Church celebrates the Eucharist. Come over, take the plunge, and come to eat joyfully at this banqueting table, the table of the Holy Mass, the table of the Eucharist. Jesus is waiting for you. Do not delay. Do not let anything obstruct your path to Jesus to come and share in that banqueting table where he gives us abundantly, generously, joyfully, lovingly his precious body and blood to eat and drink, so that we may fulfill ourselves completely, fully, totally in Jesus and Jesus alone. Come on.